have a yard of leather, some cotton gingham, interfacing zippers, and a dream. And that dream is a leather BAGGU bowling bag. Have I ever made a bag before? No. But honestly, when has that ever stopped me before? Something about me is that I don't actually own any leather handbags. I literally only own tote bags. And that's mostly because tote bags, I feel like they just like come into your life. Like you get them and you don't know where you got them from. But I feel like a bag, like an actual like big girl handbag, you have to be more intentional about. And I'm really picky. I don't want to buy something that's cheap and not real leather and isn't gonna last very long, but I also don't want to spend a lot of money. And I'm also pretty specific about what I would want the bag to look like. So I basically, for the last year, been looking at thrift stores, vintage stores, and flea markets to try and find something that hits on my criteria. And I'm starting to think that it's just not out there because I'm that picky. So today we're going to try and make a bag. I might try and make 2 bags. We'll see how much I can squeeze out of this. And I'm not going to use a pattern. What I'm thinking is we're basically making a box. So we're going to have 6 sides. Bottom, side, 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 top. And that means I think we're going to have 3 pattern pieces, which is going to be the bottom and the 2 long sides, and then the short sides, and then the top is going to be 2 pieces because it'll be split in half by the zipper. This is what I have. I have 3 pattern pieces. I have my bottom, side, side, and then the top will just be the same as the bottom, but cut in half with an extra bit of seam allowance added to compensate for the zipper. My zipper, I measured, it was about 14 inches, and so the long side of the bottom and the long side of the long side, oh my god, they're both 14 inches, so these go together. This is 7 inches. That was just an arbitrary choice. I thought it felt right. And this is 9. And then the last side, 7 inches to match with the bottom, 9 inches to match with the side. And then I was looking at it with these black lines and I thought that it was looking too big. So I put 1/2 inch of seam allowance instead of putting it on the outside like I normally would. I put it on the inside. So that way this is shrunk by 1 inch. And you're thinking, oh no, but what about the zipper? It's fine because I'm using a plastic zipper. So as long as everything is a little bit smaller, I'm fine because the plastic teeth mean I can sew over it pretty easily. Whereas if this was a metal zipper, you can still make it shorter, but it's a lot more work. So it's been a day. I was going to start putting this bag together yesterday, but then I was sitting and thinking about it and I realized that I had literally no idea how I was going to put this together. So I stepped back and I watched a lot of tutorials and videos on other people making similar bags, and surprisingly there was not a lot of information out there. So I think I understand what I'm going to do, but I'm not entirely sure. I also did a lot of the prep work, so I cut all my lining pieces, and I also cut all of the pieces out of my leather and I interfaced them with, this is super thick fusible interfacing, and I cut the interfacing to be 1/2 inch like thinner than the leather, just so the seams don't get super bulky. I also did the math on the strap. Basically what I did is I took my tape measure and just looped it around my shoulder and figured out how long I wanted it to be. So this strap, it's about 42 inches. And so I'm hoping that the final straps, after I insert it into the bag, will be like 38. But if we're a few inches off, I don't think it'll matter. And then the final thing I did is I was looking back at how the BAGGU bag was constructed. And I saw that the straps, they were sort of inserted into the bag with like little notches in the sides. So I added those to my bag pieces. And then finally, I decided I wanted to add an outside pocket. So I cut out some leather and then some lining fabric with thinner fusible interfacing. And I decided I wanted to make an inside zipper pocket. And so I've prepped that to make this inside zipper pocket. And we're gonna start with this first, and then we're gonna move on to making the rest of the bag. This is my pocket piece. It's just a piece of the lining fabric that has been interfaced with lightweight interfacing, and it is 2 inches wider than the zipper that I chose to make this pocket with. And what I've done is I've drawn this box on just with pen that is the width of the zipper, and it's 3/8 of an inch tall. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna line this up with a piece of the lining, right sides together, and I'm gonna center it up as best I can, and then sew it together around this box. And then I'll be able to cut it open, flip it inside out, and that will basically be the pocket. And then we should be able to, boom. And now we're going to sew the zipper in, and then fold the pocket piece up and sew around the 3 unsewn edges so it would be a sealed pocket. Next, we have to deal with these little notches, which is where the straps are gonna go. So my straps are 3 inches wide because folded in half, I have 1 inch and then 1/2 inch of seam allowance to sew it together. So I'm going to press and sew these. And then the idea is once these are pressed and sewed, they will be able to go into this slot. And I have these little squares of leather to basically sandwich the strap into the outside of the bag and this little leather piece. Guys, I am using a walking foot for the first time to do these straps, and y'all, it's really nice. I think that this is the cleanest top stitching that I have ever done. So a few updates I wanted to share. I attached the strap to one side of the bag, and the way I did this is I basically have 3 layers of leather. I have my outer shell, I have the strap, and then I have these little scrap pieces. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm just sandwiching the strap between the 2 pieces of leather and then sewing it down. And it seems to be working pretty well. The other thing is I went on a little side quest and I attached a pocket to the side of the bag. I'm hoping I can use this to put like a water bottle in. I don't know, but basically how I did this so it goes out a little bit is the pocket piece of fabric is a trapezoid, so it is wider on the top, skinnier on the bottom, and that's what's allowing it to have this room to like pop out so I can put stuff in the bag. It's getting a little bit late and I work tomorrow, so my plan is I'm going to attach the strap to this side of the bag and the lining, because I'm attaching the lining now to these front pieces, which feels really wrong, but I promise there's a reason that we'll get to later. And then tomorrow I will hopefully finish assembling the bag. I don't know, I think I'm almost done, but I feel like even though I have been sewing since I was in elementary school, I still have absolutely no sense of how long it takes me to actually do something. So I'm hoping that we'll get it done tomorrow, but who knows? It is day 3. We are in the home stretch. We have 1 more zipper to install. We put the bag together and then we're done, I hope. The way I'm installing this zipper, I am basically creating a zipper sandwich. So I've put the zipper in between my lining and my shell fabrics, right sides together, and then just stitched a line along that edge. And I'm going to unfold it, do the same thing with the other side and then top stitch it down to keep everything nice and neat and in place. Now we're gonna make what is called a gusset, which is a new word for me, at least for bags, and that is the bottom and side pieces of the bag that make it wider. If that makes sense, I make it a box and not just like two pieces of fabric sandwiched together. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to sew my 3 leather pieces together, so the sides and the bottom, and the lining pieces together, right sides together separately. And then somehow we're going to attach it to the zipper piece, and then we're going to have like basically a circle that is the sides of our bag. Now this gets sandwiched in between the shell and the lining, just like the zipper got sandwiched in between the shell and the lining. And then hopefully I should be able to just flip this around and ta-da! So this is the sides of our bags. I'm going to just top stitch down the sides so it's all a little bit easier to work with, but this was surprisingly easy. I thought this was going to be stressful, but so far this whole project has been like completely stress-free. It's time to get a little bit more up close and personal because this is the moment when the bag is finally going to become a bag. We have our 3 pieces, our front back, and then our side gusset, whatever it's called. And somehow I need to sew the sides onto the gusset neatly. So my plan for this is I am going to just flip this inside out and kind of stack it on top of my side and then just clip the seam allowances together as best as I can, go really slow, and hope for the best. This is what I have with it pinned together. I added these notches in the middle up to where my top stitching was, just to sort of help it fold around the corners a little bit easier. I'm going to sew this with my walking foot, I think, and I'm just going to go really, really slowly, especially around these corners, so I don't make any mistakes. Because if you're wondering why I am using these clips instead of pins, it's because the leather, once you put a hole in it, since it's not woven, it'll stay, the hole will stay. And so, yeah. I think I kind of ate that up. Now you might be wondering what we're going to do about all these raw edges. And to answer that question, I have to go make some gingham bias tape. I'm back with the bias tape. And so what this is for is basically we are going to use it to finish the inside of this bag so the inside can look as nice as the outside. So our last step in this bag is we're just going to bias bind these edges and then we'll be done. Could this bias binding have been a little bit neater? Yes, but the real question is going to be how the outside looks. So it's time for the final reveal. We're just going to flip